Ah, shoot, you got it. Okay, we are recording, so we just wanted to make sure that this was all set before we started recording, so I'm going to turn this over to Roger.
Hey, Roger.
Hi.
Hi.
I hope you all brought tomatoes or something that I can dodge later on. No, not really. Who would have thought that a probably 50-inch screen wouldn't be big enough? You know, I'll remember when the cabinet was much bigger than the screen, and we had this like furniture-sized TV that had like a 19-inch screen, and you know, the reason we couldn't see it was because it was always blurry. And I'm giving Laura here just a moment to adjust our press conference like microphones so that, yeah, that probably needs to come that way and maybe this way.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We got
Okay.
You all here okay?
So
Okay, I think we're good.
You gotta get
I-
a little closer to that mic.
I will try to project. And you know, the Watsons are known for projection, and not projectiles, but vocal projection. So thank you for coming today. I'm thankful for Nate, who happens to be a distant cousin, and for Laura for their organizational and technical skills and getting all of this together. Before we start, I'd like to make a couple of introductions because we've made some changes in the business office. Denise Lyman was our accounting, you know, when she answered the phone, she just said accounting. And so that's what I'll call her. She worked here forever, it seemed like, and she knew everything, and she kind of guided the plane from the back seat. And so we were grateful for her, but she decided to retire this last spring, and we wished her well and hope that she has a lovely and happy retirement. So we've made some changes. Melody Richardson, whom many of you may remember from her days in the dining services department as one of the supervisors and coordinators. I don't remember exactly what your title was back then, but I think you did most everything. She is now has moved into Denise's position, doing accounting work, and she pays the bills and takes in the money to make deposits and sends some charges to people and does all kinds of things for us. We're grateful for her. Melody, would you stand and wave so people can see who you are? A few of you may not have met her because you may have been here just a short time, but I'm so glad to have Melody with us. She was working in the accountant position, doing payroll and general ledger work as well as statements, but she was kind enough to say, let's move me into Denise's role, and that will be a help to you. In the spring this year, we were pleased to bring on board Jenna Reidelhuber, and she is an accounting graduate from Portland State University, which means that she's really good since that's where I graduated from. And she is our controller beginning in April of this year, and she is responsible for resident statements and the payroll function and all of our general ledger work that we do that divides up all of our costs and our incomes into the right places so they go where they're supposed to. She's also been working hand in hand with me on our financial audit this year, and I hope that by next year she can be the one who's in charge of doing that work, and I can just sit there and read my novel and play in my spreadsheet. Jenna, would you stand and wave? We previously introduced her when she came on staff as Jenna McCarn, but she has decided that she's no longer Irish, and now she's German or something. I don't know. You'll have to ask her about that name change. It's too complicated for me to understand. I'm grateful for Jenna and her participation here. I think we have a great staff, and I hope that you all get a chance to meet them and ask them questions along the way. This would be the part of the presentation where I would show you old pictures of my family coming across the Oregon Trail, or selfies of my ancestors who came over on the Mayflower or whatnot. But I didn't have time to get those together, and so I'll do something else. A year ago, I wrote up a philosophy of the Chief Financial Officer for myself and read that to this group. But we've had a number of people who have moved in since then, and I thought it would be helpful if I would repeat that. And even if it's not helpful, it's a chance for me to get to talk about myself. So here goes. In context for today's presentation, I believe it is helpful for me to explain some of my thought processes in how we manage finances at Friendsview, and perhaps to tell you a bit of my story. Prior to coming to Friendsview, I have worked in the retirement segment of the economy, doing operational and development accounting for 20 years, all of that working within the retirement industry for for-profit companies. While there is nothing wrong with working for a for-profit company, and while I enjoyed my work at those companies I worked for, eventually I tired of always having to emphasize financial profits and margins, of telling community managers that they weren't making enough money, that they needed to make more. At the same time, I was part of an effort led by parents of adults with developmental disabilities to start a not-for-profit organization to provide services to those individuals. In that context, I caught the vision of doing work which was focused on the mission of the organization. In our case, to be dedicated to creating rich, integrated life experiences through compassionate care for individuals who are profoundly developmentally challenged. Since 2008, this group has provided services to this vulnerable group of clients. My wife Sue and I have been members of the board of directors for this group since its inception, and I have been privileged to serve as its treasurer during that time. Working in that capacity, I found joy in providing financial and accounting expertise to be responsible for the financial infrastructure of an organization which was focused primarily on remaining financially sustainable while the mission was being carried forward. 5 years later, I left a good position at my for-profit company to go to work full-time in the not-for-profit world, and took a pay cut in doing so. So that has helped me develop some philosophies that I've worked into what I do here at Friendsview. One, what is best for the Friendsview community? It is important to ask the question, what is best for the community at Friendsview? Meaning both the organization and the individuals who live and who work here. Part of that is I am all in for the residents at Friendsview. I get that you have limited resources from which to pay obligations. Floyd and Arlene Watson were my parents, and they lived at Friendsview beginning in 1993 until my father's passing in 2019 and my mother in 2021. If you care about the math, that means my mother lived here for 28 years. I paid their bills the last several years of their lives after they moved to health services when they would have been most affected by rate increases. I was involved in drawing down their IRA account in order to pay their bills. So I have firsthand experience and understand the pressure at least as experienced by my parents. I also understand that our resident statements at times can be confusing. And so I actually began seeing resident statements here before I came on staff, and understood that from a layperson's perspective. Additionally, a number of you are my cousins or aunts and uncles. Some of you, even those who I'm not related to, have known me longer than I've known myself, because my memory only goes back so far. Some of you have known my parents longer than I knew my parents. Some of you may have even known not only my grandparents, but one or two of you, my great-grandparents. There's a long, long history that goes back. I am committed to you as residents to do the best that's for you. I'm also all in for Friendsview employees. Staffing expense is the largest source of expense here at Friendsview, comprising about 43% of total expenses. Similar to residents, the staff at Friendsview have been faced with extraordinary inflation in the last few years. In order to attract and retain quality workers, it has been imperative to keep wages competitive so that those who work hard to provide service and care can also meet their own family needs. This is not a choice between two competing interests, but a recognition that those team members who serve our residents do so for more than a paycheck. We're all in a community here, and those of us on staff recognize that one of the real benefits we receive at Friendsview is relationships, both with other staff and residents who are our cheerleaders and a great source of joy. There's one person here that I walk down the aisle or the hallway and I see a smile on her face, and it just makes my day. And it doesn't matter the circumstances that I might have been going through. When I see that smile, it makes my day and makes it all better. So thank you. So every financial choice I make has the mission of Friendsview and the good of its residents and employees at its very heart, with the reality that each decision also involves maintaining Friendsview's financial sustainability. Two key thoughts are included here. What is helpful to Friendsview residents' financial security is also good for Friendsview's financial security. And what is good for Friendsview's financial strength will make Friendsview residents more secure and safe. So I recognize that you may not be able to see all the figures that are on the charts. Maybe you won't even see them if you're in the front row. As Laura indicated, I'm going to get her the file so that she can put that on wherever that thing goes, and you'll be able to see it on the screen that you have available to you and can see all that there is. I'm just going to read what I've prepared in my statements here, and so that you can be aware, at least verbally, of what's happening. So here are some important numbers from the preliminary financial statements. Note that these are all related to our Friendsview fiscal year, which runs from August 1st to July 31st. Now, I don't know who decided that that was a good idea to make for a fiscal year. I think it's a terrible choice myself. It means that I rarely go on vacation during the summer because I'm busy getting budgets ready, or I am doing year-end work, whatever that may be. And so I don't think that was a very good idea to make the choice that way. But we just live with what we have. So again, I know that you can't see the numbers, but the changes seem small in this report. But there are significant changes between 23 and 24. There's two columns here. The one on the right-hand side is 2023 fiscal year, and the next one over is fiscal 24. Both total assets and liabilities decreased slightly compared to last year. This change is related to the addition of a working capital fund and small construction projects around the campus, unrelated to the expansion projects at Springbrook, Sutton Terrace, and Charles Beals Plaza. The biggest change in the balance sheet was the reduction in debt by about $35 million from paying off the bond debt. We'll look at a chart later that shows that. This came primarily because of entrance fees received from Sutton Terrace residents. This suggests that there was an offsetting liability increase in entrance fees. We show that entrance fees paid as a liability as Friendsview has a contractual obligation to provide care throughout the lives of each of our residents. We take this obligation seriously, and all of our efforts go to making the lives of our residents be secure and rewarding. There is also further shift of restricted assets into property, plant, and equipment related to expansion, completion, and other physical plant improvements. Once again, the expansion projects have been fully funded by the 2021 bond issue, and that Friendsview unrestricted assets have not been used to fund construction. Net assets remained in a negative position in fiscal 24. This is related to an operating loss for the year. As you can see the difference between, well, maybe you can't see the difference between, but there is a difference between total revenues and total expenses. A significant amount of this is related to lower occupancy in health services, but also that we haven't been able to convert as many of the Creekside first floor units to independent living from healthcare as expected due to delays in construction. This is consistent with a projection made in 2021 that showed there would be losses during the construction period, but that recovery would begin to take place in subsequent years. We're working to make that happen. So days cash on hand is an important figure that we track very carefully for at least two reasons. One is that we want to make sure we have enough resources to be able to pay our expenses. The other one is that we're actually required by the state of Oregon and by our bond investors to maintain a day's cash on hand balance that is sufficient to meet our expense needs for 180 days, or about 6 months in the event of some catastrophic event that impacts our ability to take in revenue. Now, I can't imagine what this is going to be, but we strive to keep that and maintain that level of cash and investments on hand. Now, every year we've had a comparison of Friendsview's days cash on hand to, which is shown in the blue, to the median type A single site life plan communities across the nation. And you can see that in the years, just if you can see the colors, the red bars tend to be higher than the blue bars, which is Friendsview, for the last 3 years. But this year we haven't received that information yet from our auditors, and so I've left that blank. But I can tell you that compared to the required level of cash of 180 days, in 2024, we have 193 days cash on hand as measured on July 31st. every year we talk about entrance fees that we've received, and I'm showing this information to you a little bit differently this year. In this chart, the blue section that it's at the bottom that doesn't look like very much is the entrance fees that we have received from sales of what we call current inventory. Apartment units that are located or duplex units that are located in existing buildings. This building here, Meadow Way duplexes, Springbrook South, some of those areas, as compared to what we call expansion units, which for this purpose will be Springbrook Meadows North and Sutton Terrace, the new building. And so you can see that particularly this year, we have a much larger revenue source from entrance fees from expansion, simply because we have had about 90 apartments get filled in Sutton Terrace, and well, not quite that many. It's more like about 85, something like that. It changes, it seems like, weekly, and I never keep caught up on what that is. But we've had people move in across this year, and we've received entrance fees as they moved in. And so in this year, we have received quite a bit from that source. Now, looking at the current inventory entrance fees, typically we have said that we need about $5 million in existing home entrance fees to be able to accomplish the needed uses as outlined in the 4 uses of these fees. And I believe I failed to give you those uses. First is to build cash reserves. Again, we want to be able to have that 180 days of cash on hand. And so we try to build and add to those cash reserves. Second, to make principal payments on our outstanding bonds issued in 2016 and related to, in just a moment here, we'll talk about how those are also impacting the 2021 bonds. Capital improvements, repairing the building, major expenses, improvements. We recently put a new roof on the Creekside building, and prior to that we did some major painting and some things like that. We are renovating units as they transition between residents, and so make major capital outlays there. And so that is also the third use. And then we're also covering operating expenses that are not covered by monthly fees. So looking at the previous 3 years, if you can't see it because it's a small thing on this small screen, I'll just let you know that we've had some time of smaller entrance fees received compared to the need of about $5 million. In 2021, we received just under $2 million. In 2022, we received about $2.2 million. Last year fiscal 23 grew to about $4.8 million, so that was good. This year, we actually received almost $5.6 million in entrance fees. But I have to tell you that the first 6 months of the year, we had only received about 20%, or about $1 million, of those entrance fees that we really counted on. And so consequently, we ended January's mid-year point with a lower cash balance than what was required by both the state of Oregon and investors. In response to that, our senior managers met for an all-day strategy session, and then Todd and I met with the residency planning team to see what could happen. What could we do to turn things around? And the results were, quite frankly, electric, with energy coming out of both meetings, but particularly from the residency planning team. They went to work on new and innovative ways to communicate the opportunities here at Friendsview. The end result was that we ended the year receiving almost $5.6 million in current inventory entrance fees, the blue in our 2024 bar. Not only did the first half of the year trend reverse, but the result was a record number of sales. The amount received in expansion entrance fees this last year was about $32 million. And so that was a great help, and it's going to actually contribute in the future well-being of Friendsview in a number of ways. And we'll get to that as we look at this chart here, which talks about bond debt. Now, I recognize that the numbers that I'm presenting here, which you can't read anyway, are going to be more than most of us can comprehend. In 2021, we had $176 million in bond debt. That went to pay for the construction of Pennington Terrace in 2017, and then Springbrook Meadows North cottages and the new community center out there, the Charles Beals Health Center across the way, and Sutton Terrace along the way. So we had, at that point, $176 million in bond debt, and since that time, we have reduced it at the end of July 2024 to just over $133 million of bond debt. And so, I don't know about you, but anytime I can pay off $33 million, I had to do a little math there. Anytime I can pay off $33 million of debt, I get excited about that. Doesn't happen very often. Now, most of that comes from entrance fees, as I indicated, that were from the Springbrook Meadows North residents and from Sutton Terrace. The smaller part comes from regular principal payments we're making on the 2016 bond debt, but most of the reduction comes from these entrance fees, which were required to be made principal payments as part of our bond agreement. So let's look at a chart that talks about expenses. And whether you can see it or not, this chart brings with it some hope that in the previous 4 years, we have seen total cost per resident day. That's a way that we can compare year to year about what is happening to expenses based on the number of what we call resident days. That's the number of residents that we have on any given day times the number of days in that year. And so for 4 years, and actually longer than that, we have seen total cost per resident day increase, related to many different issues that are beyond our control, macroeconomic issues, catastrophes, and epidemics that have happened in the last several years. You don't need to remind me of what those are, or I don't need to remind you what those are. But what this shows is in our budget for 2025, we are actually able to reduce expenses on a per resident day from the amount experienced in 2024 of $135 per resident day down to $126 per resident day. And our hope is that as residency has increased, we will have a broader population base which will help us to deliver services more efficiently. Of course, 2025 budgeted expense is still higher than 2023 and the previous years. And even though it is lower than 2024, but we have to remember that 2025 is still a vision for what we hope to happen and is not reality yet. So it is on the staff to be very careful about what we have expenditures on. And as I say that, I will also say that demand for increased services and additional Wi-Fi kinds of things, not to make you feel guilty if you've asked for those things, also puts increased pressure on expenses, which could create issues for us. So we've now worked hard to have a slim budget for 2025, and now we have the hard work ahead of us to make that our reality. So I want to look at some costs that we have followed in the past that have had historically high increases and to some degree continue to have high increases. Our total food cost has gone up about 28%. That is just for food that is being served in the main dining room here. And what we see is inflation still at work in those food costs. Particularly impacted has been the meat and poultry category, as we have seen that increase. Our facilities maintenance cost has gone up. Now, a good deal of that relates to the fact that we've enlarged our staff and we have additional buildings that we're serving. And some of the new buildings have had some significant problems. Some of you have lived with those problems, and I'm sorry that we've had some water issues, and we've had some electrical issues, we've had some vibration issues at Sutton Terrace, and we're working hard to get those corrected as quickly as we can. Tim Towers is an amazing guy who is directing an amazing team of facilities staff, and they're working hard as they can. I appreciate their work that they're doing. So for the second year in a row, our property and liability insurance, which is a major cost, has gone up 35% in June and will affect our expenses in 2025. That doesn't include the increased cost of adding new buildings to our coverage. If we were to count that, our property and liability insurance more than doubles. We paid about $250,000 a year ago to add those buildings to our insurance policy. And so it's a big number. We've now experienced double-digit increases in our property and liability coverage on a per resident day basis that is in double digits. And so in 2022, it was 15%, and then 35% last year, and 35% again in fiscal 24. At the same time, our insurance deductible has also climbed. It has quadrupled, going from $12,500 per incident up now to $50,000 per incident. That's the reality of the insurance world these days as they face floods and storms and all kinds of catastrophes that are happening around our country related to climate change and those issues that are happening. The good news is that health service costs have subsided just a bit, and this is great news. It's gone down about 3%, fiscal 24 compared to fiscal 23. This is related to two dynamics. One is the reduction in agency use in the second half of fiscal 24. We went from an average monthly expense of about $185,000 in the first half of fiscal 24 to about $80,000 in the second half of the year. And I really have to give credit to our fantastic health services employee coordination office who's been working hard. Kim Hipton has been just going to employment fairs and trying to tell everybody this is a great place to work, and so you want to come and work here. And she's had a good deal of success, and so we're glad about that. The other dynamic, of course, is that we have had lower occupancy, particularly in Charles Beals Plaza, and so there is that reduction of revenue side, but that also means that it has had an impact on our need to hire staff, and particularly agency staff, that has been an expensive service to our residents. So looking at labor cost per resident day, I'll not spend a great deal of time on this, but you can see that far right-hand columns are dipping down just slightly. We're lower here than we were in fiscal 23. This doesn't mean that total payroll costs decreased and will decrease more. In fact, our total payroll increased in 2024 by 1.2 million and is anticipated to increase by about 1 million in 2025. But we have a greater number of residents who are paying monthly fees, and that does give us a broader base to spread out those costs. Again, we're working hard to control all of our costs, including our employment costs. Here's the thing that makes the engine run, so to speak. The fees from residents. We recognize that all of you people are paying monthly fees, and that's the thing that makes Friendsview run. And that is the thing that gives us the resources to make everything go. Remember that we only have one source of funds which enables us to pay the bills. And I'm just grateful for all of you to be that source. So don't forget that we're recognizing that you're the ones who are doing this. So again, you're not going to be able to see this schedule here. It talks about our budget in 2024 and our actual results in 2024. I'm not going to read every line here. I'm just going to tell you that we had a budget for revenue of about $19 million in 2024. We received about $17 million in the same time. We're about 1.9 million short of the expectation that we had. Again, related to reduced occupancy in the health services areas and the fact that we couldn't move new people into Creekside first floor, where we're still renovating after a delay in construction that sent everything to be in a backlogged sort of way. Our total budgeted expense for 24 was $21,600,000, almost $21,700,000, which means that we anticipated using about $2.6 million of entrance fees received in the year. But unfortunately, we had expenses that were greater than the budget, about $3 million greater. Primarily related to wage cost and also interest expense, which was about $1.2 million higher than anticipated. I don't want to break the record, but again, this relates to delays in construction. The original plan was that there was a fund set up with the bond issue back in 2021, and it was going to pay interest expense on those bonds for approximately 2.5 years. We were scheduled to have 2 years of construction, which would then mean that we'd still have a half year, about 6 months worth of funds to make those interest payments while we filled up the new buildings. Unfortunately, the construction process took not 2 years, but really 2.5+ years. And so all of those funds were used up during that construction period. And while people were moving in and were filling up the building, we had to include all of those interest expenses in our budget. And at $5.8 million for the year, that's almost $500,000 each month. So we ended up using about $7.5 million of entrance fees to cover our losses for the year. This year we have projected a $20,700,000 revenue income. We now have Sutton Terrace mostly full, and we hope to have the Creekside first floor with significant number of residents by the end of the year that will help us increase our revenue base. We also are anticipating that total expenses will also increase. That includes a $1 million increase in wages paid and some other expenses increasing. Interest expense will go down this year, we believe, based on the fact that we have paid off the short-term bonds, like I said, about $33 million. Those are all paid off now, so we no longer have interest that is related to those, but we'll still have a significant need to use entrance fees, about $5.5 million. This is consistent with a projection that was made back in 2021 that would show that we would have losses during the construction period years, and then we would begin to recover, which we hope and plan to begin that recovery in fiscal 25. And so that we hope to see that happen. So I want to talk a little bit about the Resident Assistance Fund that we have here at Friendsview. I often receive questions like, what happens if I run out of money? Are you going to kick me out? And my answer is that no, we have a fund called the Resident Assistance Fund. If you live at Friendsview, you have paid into the fund from an allocation from your entrance fee, which goes to build that fund. And so we'll ask a couple of things. And so what I've written here on the slide is that the Resident Assistance Fund is or are funds that are set aside primarily from entrance fees and some contributions to provide benefit in the case that individuals exhaust their resources due to events beyond their control. Almost everyone who lives at Friendsview has paid an entrance fee, a portion of which goes to build the Resident Assistance Fund, which provides a benefit to those who exhaust their financial resources and need help paying their Friendsview fees. While this fund is not insurance, you could think of it as similar in that you participate through your entrance fees before you have any idea that you might need help. Think of this like, in a sense, wellness insurance. You've lived a good long life, and now you find that you have lived longer than your money has. Friendsview has a contractual obligation, and I want to emphasize this, that we have a contractual obligation, and it's in the resident agreement, which you signed, that we consider your circumstances and provide assistance if it is warranted. That's one of the reasons that we do a financial projection on your life based on actuarial studies that project people's life expectancies, and we actually qualify you to be able to move in, that you meet the criteria that is established by that forward-looking projection. So there is an application process to the Resident Assistance Fund, and some guidelines regarding expenditures and a relocation to a smaller unit may be required. That is a factor in helping us make the fund used to be the most efficient and effective as possible. But again, it is like an insurance policy that you pay into when you make your entrance fees. You've signed a contract that guarantees you that benefit, and so we want to live up to that. So, the Resident Assistance Fund, what is it not? Sometimes when people tell me they think they're going to run out of the money, they make statements like, I don't want to take charity. So let's look at what the Resident Assistance Fund is not. The Resident Assistance Fund is not charity. Though it does receive some tax-deductible contributions, some people give in memory of other residents when they leave our community through death, and it is primarily funded through entrance fees and returns on investment. Also, as indicated previously, it is a Friendsview obligation as part of the package that you purchased when you moved into Friendsview. And it is why we can say Friendsview has never kicked anyone out of the community because they couldn't pay their bill. The Resident Assistance Fund is not welfare. The state provides no benefit to anyone to pay their Friendsview bill. We do not participate in Medicaid and take no Medicaid or other welfare funds. The fact is that Friendsview has kept many people off of welfare by providing a benefit at a time when, if they were living in a community depending upon the welfare system, they might be forced to receive welfare support or face having to move to a facility that did. That is not likely to happen here. It has happened 0% of the time in our long history. Receiving benefit from the Resident Assistance Fund is not an indication that you don't know how to manage your money or that you are relegated to some inferior status. None of us can tell the future. We don't know how long we'll live, and we don't know what catastrophic events might happen in our lives. In fact, paying your entrance fee with the assistance component of your residency agreement is actually one of the smarter business decisions that you could have ever made. It gives you security in ways that you can be confident that you will be cared for the entirety of your lifetime. So, when you believe you are getting close to exhausting your resources, I invite you to come have a confidential conversation with me. Some have had that conversation when they had $100,000 or more in their savings. They want to plan ahead. And so we look at what that looks like and what it looks like for their future. I can provide some input into your situation. I won't tell you how to invest your money or give you tax advice, but I can provide some understanding of your situation. If it is time to reap the benefit that you have invested in through your residency, I'll have you fill out a confidential application form listing your income and savings resources, as well as your Friendsview expenses and some other expenses as well. We do provide an allowance for certain other expenses, such as groceries and medical expense, as well as some personal expense. I then put that application through a process to determine the level of assistance to be provided. There is a Friendsview board approval process given to all applications, but it is handled on an anonymous basis such that there isn't firsthand knowledge of who the individual is that would be receiving that benefit. Once approved, you'll receive a monthly credit toward payment of your Friendsview expense, and you can live secure in the knowledge that your basic needs are met. You may have heard us talk about an actuarial study that Friendsview does from time to time to determine whether there is enough organizational reserves to meet the actuarial liability into the future. What that means is we ask the question, do we have enough money to meet the needs of all residents as they live their best life, whether they have good health or there are challenges? Friendsview has engaged A.V. Powell, experts in this field, to do a 20-year forward-looking study to determine Friendsview's funded status. They have looked at cash on hand, the age of fixed assets, the fees charged to residents, including monthly and entrance fees, and the anticipated increases in those fees over time. They also look at expenses and assumed inflation of those expenses in comparison to fees charged. And here is what they found in regard to Friendsview's funded status. And I have to say, you're one of the first ones to see this. The board has not even seen this. We have talked to the finance committee of the board, but the full board has not seen this. So you get the inside scoop now. Friendsview has a funded status of satisfactory with qualification and a score of 100.2%. This means that Friendsview does have enough to fund its obligations if nothing bad happens. So we have this very slim margin at this point. And actually, we're not in a bad position in comparison to some previous years where we've looked. In fact, I was talking to our HR director, Nisi Segor, the other day in our senior leadership team meeting, and she was saying, I remember when our funded status was something like 75%. And so we've actually made good progress in that way. And so on the one hand, this is good news. We have enough funds to provide security and care for the actuarial lives of all residents for their expected lifetime. On the other hand, even with our current good financial results, if we experience severely negative investment results in our reserve investments, or we have catastrophic incidents which impact the organization, we may slip below that funded level. We would like to get to the level that our funded status is simply satisfactory and no mention of qualification. I asked the question of our actuarial person the other day, what would it take for us to get there? And she said the borderline for that level is 105%. So we have 4.8% as a goal to get to reach that status. So one of the aspects of the study was to calculate the surplus or the deficit of each of the Friendsview unit types and determine whether each unit has a deficit or surplus based on entrance and monthly fees, measured against expenses into the future. It's a pretty complex graph, or not graph, but a chart that they put together, and it's like 6 pages long. It's a complicated thing, and they do a lot of work, and that all boils down to that 100.2% or 102.2% measurement that we have. So to improve our score to the place we can make your life be the most secure, we are looking at rates on a unit type basis as opposed to an across-the-board rate increase for the current year, while being careful to watch expenses. This is the part where I get sweaty. I know you do. So for the current year, we are increasing rates at a variance, that's not the right word, variable between 5 and 7.5% just for first persons. That's the person who receives the largest charge on your statement. Not everybody will receive that. The second person rate will increase at a 4.5% rate. That's lower than what we've had to increase in the previous 3 years, and so we're pleased to be able to do that. All healthcare rates will increase at a 4.5% rate, so that we can say that to those who are the most vulnerable, we're going to strive to give you the lowest increase. The average rate increase is approximately 5.4%. This is a lower rate increase than we have experienced in my term as Chief Financial Officer. And I want to show you our historical rate graph that you've seen before, and we update this every year, and always we look back to the first 20 years of the organization and we go, oh, what a chaotic time that must have been. They've become more stable in the recent 20 years, with the exception of the previous 3 years related to all kinds of catastrophic issues and inflation that's taken place on a macroeconomic basis. But we're working hard to bring those rates down. We're almost back to the historical norm, and we hope to get there as quickly as we can. So I believe the ink is hardly dry on the rate sheets that we've put together for you. And I believe they are on the table outside the door, and you can pick them up as you leave. I want to make sure that you get the correct schedule for you. If you were moved into Friendsview or had a residence agreement through an off-campus program before January 1st of 2021, you want to find the stack that says before January 1st of 2021. If you have a residency agreement, most likely you moved in after that date, January 1 of 2021. You want to find the stack that says after January 1 of 2021. And on the schedule itself, there is red letters at the top that indicates whether those schedules are before or after. And so pick those up as you leave, and you can see the rate that would relate to your specific unit. So I wonder if we have questions, and I don't know if we have a microphone that is roaming, and so our question period may be very, very short. I don't see Nate. He set us up, and
You can repeat the question.
I could repeat the question. So let's give it a try. If you have a question, I'd be glad to take it. If you have specific questions about your situation, see me later and I'll do my best to give input. Yes.
Are the rates that we're picking up on the web at this point so that we don't have to pick them up?
At this point, those rate schedules are not on the web. I will, along with the presentation slides that I've used today, I will try to get those to Laura Fresher so that she can include them in for your use. Thank you for that question. Yes.
About how many independent units are there and how many are occupied, or what's the vacancy right now?
So the question is, how many independent units do we have and how many are occupied? I haven't checked specific numbers on the occupied units. We have in total 350 units available for occupancy, and I want to say that that number is something like 310 to 315 that are occupied. We're just
About 90%.
yeah, about that level. It changes daily, it seems like, recently, and I don't know what that exact number is.
I think
Yes.
we have about 35 empty apartments throughout the community.
So about 35 empty units throughout the community. So that would line up with 315, fairly close.
And our health center is
129 units available, and we have 75 the last time I checked who are occupying those facilities.
And is that par for the course, or we're still catching up with the new units being built?
The question is that a par for the course? Is that typical of our history? And we're a little bit below what our historical occupancy is. We strive for and generally have hit the 94 to 96% occupied, and so we still have a bit more to go. Again, related to, we're almost there, at Sutton Terrace, and then we have a good deal to fill up in Creekside first floor. So that is where we relate that to. Yes.
How had the federal money during COVID affected us? And how many direct admits do we have to help our bottom line and bills?
So the question is, how did the money received from the federal government in 2023 help us? And how many direct admits do we have that help us provide some additional revenue to support us? And again, I'm not exactly sure what that number is currently. I believe the last I checked, we had about 10 direct admits. In terms of looking back at 2023, when we received what was called the employee retention credit, we got a refund from the federal government that was related to the fact that we didn't lay off any employees organization-wide during the period that typically we call COVID. And the federal government was interested in keeping people employed. And so they wanted to reward those organizations who did what they needed to do to maintain their operation and keep those people employed. Now, some people left employment voluntarily, but we never laid anyone off because of lack of funds. We struggled some in that time to do that, but we kept everybody in employment. And so then at the end of that period, we went back and we figured out all of our employment costs and figured out that we were eligible for that because of specifically work that our dining department had done that went from a in-person dining program where you all came over to the main dining room and you went through the buffet line and you ate your dinner and you enjoyed your conversation with each other and then went back to your homes. So we then changed that, of course, you all remember this, I'm sure, to a point where nobody could hardly leave their apartment and not let alone go to the dining room and eat their dinner or breakfast or lunch. We were all confined to this little space. And so our dining department, they transitioned from an in-house dining or a restaurant style service, or in our case, a buffet restaurant style service most of the time, to a to-go order and delivery system. And so they delivered meals according to people's orders for a couple of years. And then we'd try to reopen and we'd do it and we'd be successful for a few days. And then we'd have another outbreak of COVID, and so we'd all have to go back in and be in our own apartments, including myself, because I had an office in a former apartment in the Manor building, and we were confined behind closed doors to just be in that little space all by ourselves. So we did a bunch of work. We worked with attorneys to provide the criteria by which we qualified the fact that the dining department was responsible for more than 15% of our revenue, meant that we qualified not only for the dining department, but for the entire organization. And so we were able to go back and look at our employment costs and submit returns requests for about $3.4 million. Now, I don't know about you, but in my book, that's a lot of money. And so we were pretty excited about that. And not only did we get the $3.4 million, but we got some interest on top of that. And so that came in. We actually received the checks on July 30 and July 31 of fiscal year 2023. And so we put that money in the bank and we said, we're not going to spend this. We're going to keep this until we have real needs that are going to mean that we need to use those resources. Well, what we didn't know was that the needs were going to start in the month of August 2023. And that was part of that was related to the fact that we had to pay insurance for the new buildings, and we had to start making interest payments because we'd used up all the funded interest account, and we had a number of other expenses. Not only the $3.4 million that we received, but actually more than that, about $4.2 million of expenses that were extraordinary in nature and that we didn't know were going to happen before they happened. And so we can say, wow, that money just went away. But it also was a tool that kept us in a position of sustainability and strength to move forward. And so I am thankful to God above, the creator of the universe, and knows all of every hair on our head, that he cares for us and gave us those resources. So that's kind of what happened to that $3.4 million. And so we keep moving forward, and we're just glad that God provided, and we can count our blessings as they are. Yes?
You're moving forward, we are moving forward. I understand there's a house on Fulton, which is the other side of Fulton, that Friendsview has purchased. Am I incorrect?
So you're talking about a house that would be on Fulton that has been purchased, and I would say that that is not correct information. We do have investors who have purchased 2 properties on Meridian Street, and we have renovated 1 home there, and it is ready for residents to move in as soon as the correct one comes along. And we also, and the next door property where we are planning to put 2 modular units into there that will be, we hope, ready for occupancy within the next 4 to 6 months. We're in the permitting process now and working with the city to get that going. And of course, we're at the mercy of the bureaucratic things that sometimes take longer than we want, but we have a good relationship with them, and we're hopeful that we can get things going here shortly.
Because we did receive word that there was a house on Fulton that was going to come down and be ours in renovation, and I wonder where. Who's going to sell on that?
I know of no home that we are in discussion, well, excuse me. There is one home that, I'm sorry, we are in discussion about, but I don't believe we are ready to make a public announcement about where that home is or anything about it at this time. Because, for one thing, we aren't going to be the owners. We have investors who are investing in properties, a couple of places for us. And so we don't want to do anything that will create an issue that might interrupt the negotiation process.
As I said, I only mentioned it because it was in the publications we received.
That must have been Meridian then.
We did talk about Meridian Street. Well, I don't know what that publication was.
I wonder where.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm afraid I can't give any details. Yes.
We used to self-insure sort of in cooperation with Church of the Brethren and somebody else. Do we still do that?
The question is whether we still self-insure like used to be done with Church Mutual or some such organization like that. And the answer is that yes, we do have a captive insurance group who does broker along with a number of other Peace Church related communities that include retirement communities that are nationwide, for one thing, but are related to Friends, Brethren, or Mennonite denominations. And we are involved in that, and every year, actually, as increased a cost that we're paying for our property and liability insurance, it's actually less than what we would be getting out in the open market. And so we're glad to be a part of that organization. Yes, right back here.
I'm wondering about meal costs for independent residents. Is there a change in that?
There is not a change currently. There is, so the question was about independent meal rates and whether there is a change there. And there is not a change at this point that I have been given. There is response to a survey that the dining department gave out in earlier this year, and it had good responses. And so they are working with that survey to see what they can do to provide a more satisfactory dining experience. And that may bring some adjustment in price, but I don't have the information to say what or when or if or any details about that. Just that the dining department is working with the responses that were given. So we had a question over here, yes.
Piggybacking on Elisa's question about the direct admits, Charles Charles Beals. That could be a wonderful boon to the community. It's a cash cow. Does residency planning have, or has residency planning been directed to have a specific marketing plan for direct admits to Charles Beals?
We have been working on a plan, and actually the social workers, again, this question is about direct admits and how we can increase them. And the social workers, Stephanie Hazard and Christy Wheatley, are kind of the point persons with that effort, because they are the ones that have the contacts and have the greatest knowledge about the health services that are offered. And so they are the ones working that avenue. And so, but certainly as residency planning does receive inquiries, they are being referred to the social work area for hopeful admission.
You might respond to talk about the memory care.
Yes. So one of the things that we have found in recent months is that the greatest demand for direct admits has to do with memory care. And the memory care unit that we have that's in what we call Garden, got to make sure I get this right now, Garden View, is completely full. We have 18 beds, and every one of them has a resident that calls that place home. And so we currently don't have room to accept additional direct admits for memory care. We are, however, converting the first floor of Charles Beals Plaza to memory care. It was designed so that we could do that easily, and we're able to do that for a fairly minimal cost, about $250,000. And so we're working on that process now, and it also is in the permitting process, and also with the Oregon Health Authority. And so we're working all avenues to make that happen as quickly as we can. We had hoped that we could open that by the end of January, and now it looks like it's more going to be the end of February. So that will help us to a good deal, and we'll be able to bring more direct admits into the community, as well as provide services to our Lifeline residents, who are our first priority. Any further questions? If not, I will thank you for attending today and being kind to me. And I hope you have a lovely day. I'm going to go on vacation for a week. So you won't be able to come down and yell at me for at least a week.
Is that the easiest way to reach you?
You can send me an email at rwatson@friendsview.org. My voicemail is backed way up, so either come down and see me or send me an email. Thank you very much.
Good press conference. Okay, we got it.
I do have a question. Those people that are directed into memory care or whatever, do they pay a fee up front like we had to move into the housing and then monthly fees?
No, they do not pay an entrance fee.
Watch out for this.
And we don't have the same kind of contractual agreement. We don't guarantee that
It is really chilly, yes.
we won't offer them any resident assistance if they run out of funds.
How much is it?
It varies, but it's about 2.5 times what we would charge for Lifeline residents.
So how much is that?
So our Lifeline residents, depending on the unit that they are in and the neighborhood that they reside in, can be anywhere from about $3,000 to about 5,000. And so the direct units would be, it's not a direct vote.
Right, but they're like 10,000.
Many of them are 10,000.
With what is, you find out.
Yeah, we're trying to match the market.
Right, okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay.
Let's go over here. I'm going to step down. John Alden, John and Priscilla Alden are direct ancestors. There's 9 greats and 9 genes. So, yeah, it's always been a source of family. And it's interestingly enough, my son has ancestors who are also from Boston. And they have the same last name, so that it's been male descendants who have passed that down. He is the final brother because he has 2 kids, but they're both girls. So unless they maintain their relationship, they will. Yeah. Oh, I've known it ever since I was a kid. There was a book in 1895 called The Johnson Wars. It was meant to track the descendants of the Mayflower to a certain degree. And so then my more recent ancestors since that time was carried forward. Yeah, it's really,
It's fun to have that.
yeah, it is. There is one. I think there's one. We actually have some residents who do need to be in memory care. We have chosen at this point, and it's not a decision that I make, to have that person remain in care, and that we are working to meet the needs of those other residents, some who are in healthcare, others who are independent, and to meet them through what we need. We haven't put anybody out at this point. And part of that has to do with the fact that we're really close to being able to open that other unit, and so we want to maintain the care with them. Generally speaking, and it depends. There may be, we craft each move to some degree based on the individual circumstances of the move. For everyone who is a resident beginning after January 1st of 2021, there was a fee associated with that move of $10,000 to cover the costs that we had for doing the move, not that we're physically moving people, but that there are administrative costs involved, and that there are renovation costs involved anytime we change residents in any particular unit. And so we do charge that.
So the $10,000 that we heard, this comes
After January of 2020. Then there, depending on whether you're moving to a unit that has a larger entrance fee or a smaller entrance fee, and most people who move from a cottage unit to, say, a new building unit. If they move in the first 3 years of residency, then there could be a refund of part of the entrance fee. There's a big calculation that I go through that figures that should be.
So I think that's probably where a lot of the questions come, is the variation. There's no.
And so it makes sense to have a conversation with the residency planning office. They aren't gonna give that information, but they'll talk to me about where you've been, where you're thinking about going, and I'll figure out what is gonna be the actual cost or refund associated with it.
Some residents have been living here for 15 years. That's supposed to be maybe. So one that's oh, no. And it's hard to encourage them.
I'd be more than happy to do a group presentation that might be targeted toward particular groups of people, say, if they had some residents in duplex cottages,
And I figured out what to do about the
Now, I know that